All right. All right, Destiny, we're live. All right, what's up, Internet World? We're the News 19 Nerds. I'm Leroy, and we have a special guest on the pool list. We have, ta-da, Destiny Johnson from KGW. What's up, Destiny?
Hello, how are you, Leroy?
I'm good. What you been reading lately?
Uh, I've been doing a reread because I am working on a series about comics to binge while you're out in quarantine. So I did a little reread of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, which is something that I love. So you can binge the comic, even though there's only one out, one Trinket breath, and then you can watch the show.
Okay.
It's a great comic. If you haven't read it, it's really there's a lot of body horror in it. It's very dark. So I really enjoyed it. That's the last one.
Not really making me want to read this now. I'm not a real big fan of body horror. Uh, I do like dark, though. I will admit, I do like dark, but I'm not a big fan of body horror. So maybe I don't know. I may give it a try. I'm not gonna say I won't. Right now, I've been rereading. So before the pandemic started, I had checked out like 6 or 7 books from the library, and I picked up this again. I have all the issues, so I picked up Naomi, and I was like, okay, I'll reread this. So I've been rereading. It's funny because a lot of the books that I've been rereading are DC books, and we're going to talk about that. I picked up Doomsday Clock, the first 6 issues, and reread Infinite Heroes in Crisis. So I've been reading that, but it's funny because we're talking about comics, and something big happened within the last week. I'm gonna let you handle it.
Oh, geez, well, I did a little bit more research on it this morning because, especially follow comic news on Twitter, which I get a lot of news from it from the website as well, Polygon is a great resource. But you get little sorts of bits and pieces of things. But I did some deep dive research on it today,
Uh-huh.
and it really seems like Diamond and DC are just having a time. So, as most people know, if you're a comic book reader, Diamond stopped distributing new comics, and they're holding off because of coronavirus concerns. They're saying that it's not safe, probably for their workers to be in the workshop, and also just generally human contact right now is not a super idea. And a lot of comic companies are obviously suffering for that reason. Comic fans are suffering for that reason, and most of all, your comic retailers are suffering. They don't have new comics to sell. However, they said that they're hopeful to resume by late May, but DC was not having it, and so they went with 2 other distributors, and now it seems like DC and Diamond are just in some weird little pissing match.
It does seem that way, and it's funny because before the pandemic happened, if you'd have asked majority of comic fans, or at least store owners, because that's kind of who, I mean, we're talking comic fans, but really store owners. Store owners had a love-hate relationship with Diamond. Diamond essentially is a monopoly, and every month as comic fans, I know for me, I pick up the Diamond catalog. It lets me know what's coming out. It gives me a kind of an update, what to look out for, but also it helped me budget. It let me know, like, for this month, this is what's coming out, and I know this is how much I'm going to pay this month, this week for comics. Diamond is the only distributor after the I want to say comic apocalypse of the 80s, after other distributors imploded, went out of business, and they have been the only distributor of comics since I don't know in the 90s when it happened, but they were the only distributor. Everybody had kind of signed an exclusive deal with Diamond that they would be the only people who distribute their comics. DC was the lone holdout, from what I understand, for about 8 years. DC did not sign an exclusive deal with them, and at one of, some people would say, the worst time, others would say this is a very good time, decided we're not going to let one monkey stop this show, and we're going to go with 2 other distributors to send out comics. I don't know how to feel about this because I've talked to a couple of shop owners. I know a lot of them have had issues with Diamond. if you'd have asked me 30, 40 days ago, asked them how they felt about Diamond, they would have been on the fence, cursed them, loved, had some good things to say, so a lot of bad things to say. Right?
Like they didn't have, there's no other option.
Yes.
Other than not, like, who cared?
Yep. And now, if you ask them, they're like, we stand with Diamond. And I'm like, what happened? And a lot of them are upset with basically what DC has done, going with two other companies who are essentially competitors. These two companies are not like, they're not the United Way. They're not charities. They are actual comic store competitors who are now going to be distributing some books. And have you looked at the titles that they're supposedly sending out?
No, I haven't. So I was going to ever read Bleeding Cool.
You would say it again?
Do you ever read Bleeding Cool?
Yes.
Yeah, so I was going through Bleeding Cool's website. I have a couple pulled up on my work laptop over here. And a bunch of it was like the response from, and I was also reading User Rock. But the response from Diamond this entire time has been so civil and so like, we are willing to work with DC, but we're not going to start sending out our comics early, blah, blah, blah. And the whole time, Diamond has been like, big old middle finger, basically.
Yeah. It's the books that I saw, one of the major book that I saw was Daphne Byrne. And I
read that one. I read the first issue of that.
And I'm not knocking Daphne Byrne. I actually like the Hill comics, but this isn't like they're not. This isn't Batman '92. This isn't anything big. When I talked to, so I reached out to the owner of Heroes and Dragons, one of our stores here, and I reached out. And here's a couple of like you talk about reading Bleeding Cool. I was reading Comics Beat. This is what a store owner told me, and this is a little bit of our interview. He says the books that they have out there is basically inventory that they're just trying to do a cash grab. It seems to him. It's none of your main titles. It's not any of your Batman titles. It's none of your Bendis Superman titles. All of it is basically just filler stuff that they had sitting on the shelf that they just want to get rid of. And one of the things he said, which I thought was interesting, was only one person he talked to from all the other store owners he talked to. There was only one person who was actually positive about this. And the reason why was because the person who was positive about this sells comics online. It's not one brick and mortar store is like actually excited to say, hey, I like this. He said one person, he sells online, so of course he's excited. I don't know why this happened now. I don't know what they're hoping to accomplish. But this is, the one thing he said is this drastically changes how we go forth from now on when the pandemic is open, when it's over.
Yeah, so you did that interview, which is well and above and beyond that I've done. I'm not but I see that comic book owner and comic book store owner, and I raised you this comic book store owner named Alan Gill of North Carolina, who's boycotting. He said that, will not be stocking DC Comics until the stay-at-home order is lifted or Diamond distributors start redistributing. So they're not going to play ball. And I think you may have answered one of the questions that I had about why this is problematic other than the fact that it's clearly a money grab. So they're stocking these books like Daphne Byrne that don't have a huge following, to be polite about it. And so my question was, you have all these comic book you have Diamond, who has surely all the books that are supposed to be going out over the next couple months, right? So that's sitting in backstock for them. What about first issues now? So Diamond's got a bunch of first print issues of, for instance, Sandman 20 is supposed to come out, Dreaming 20 or something like that. And so that's sitting in Diamond, Sandman Dreaming 20 is supposed to come out. The first printing of that is sitting with Diamond. I guess they just won't distribute the same comics that Diamond will then distribute, because what about people who collect? and they're looking for first printing. And you've got all those first printings sitting in Diamond, and then you've got what going out through these two new distributors.
I don't. It's so basically, from what I can understand and what I've gathered from talking to store owners, basically what DC said is we're not going. We're going to still work with Diamond. We're still going to send out books, but some of our inventory we're going to send out to through I want to say it's Discount Comics, DCBS in Midtown. So each one will basically have a coast. So if you live in the West Coast like you do, you would go through one service. Where if we on the East Coast, we would go through Midtown. And I think they're broken down to. I want to get the name correct because even though those are the companies they're working with, there's actually another company, Lunar and UCS, that how it breaks down. So you had a handful of days to sign up for these new books that would be sent out. When I did my interview with Heroes and Dragons, one of the things that York said was he didn't believe this is something that they hatched in 4 or 5 that they did in a week. He believes that this is something that they've been cooking up for a while, and this has been an opportunity to try it out, to see how this works, because this has been a long time coming to have one company be basically in control of your business. So if Diamond had went under, let's say, God forbid, Diamond declared bankruptcy, they weren't managing their money correctly, Diamond went under, what would the comic industry have done if Diamond goes away? Because Diamond, from what I talked to York, has said Diamond has very much supported local businesses, supported comic shops, and did not sell directly to consumers. They basically were that gatekeeper to keep comic stores in business. Whereas you have these two companies, they sell directly to me and you. I can buy anything I want from Midtown at a fraction of the price because they deal so much in bulk. Same thing with DCBS. I can get whatever I want from them. They're not worried about whether or not the allocation of books, like you mentioned, first prints, number ones. So if a comic store needs 100 of, let's say, Batman 92, and Midtown needs a few of those, who gets them? Is Midtown going to say, I'm not going to sell this comic? Or are they going to ship it out to a comic store owner?
Yeah, I don't know. And I wonder if, like, when the dust settles a little bit and we actually see consumers through these two distributors, if it's going to come out with these trying to be like, we trailblazed this, and look at what you can do. You cut out the middleman. And then all of a sudden we start to see the disintegration of Diamond, which I know some people would be in favor of because you're totally right. It's been a monopoly since before when I was just a twinkle in my daddy's eye, as they say. And so I wonder if they're going to be like, look at what we did for the comic industry. Meanwhile, you have your local comic book shop who's struggling because they're going to have to order like consumers instead of ordering like a business.
The one thing that I've noticed that I've been seeing is there's been a lot of comics shops. You mentioned Bleeding Cool. That's one site. Before this pandemic really ramped up, I've been kind of a comic nomad. I know you probably have one store that you go to. I kind of go to every single one. I'm not loyal to any, but I did finally settle down and just get one LCS. But I still always go to all of them in my city. The one I had went to was Cosmic Rays, and I spoke to Ray Hunter from Cosmic Rays, and he was telling me there are stores because of the pandemic who have closed. Like, they're not opening back up. They cannot survive being closed because they survive on that foot traffic. Every Wednesday of comic fans coming in, buying stuff, getting stuff out of their pools, and then seeing something else in the store. So without that everyday foot traffic, they're going to lose a lot of business. The one thing that I thought was interesting about this is that DC was the only company that didn't have an exclusive deal with Diamond, and I wonder if this works like you said, and they were the trailblazer. How many more companies say we're going to do a little bit of business with Diamond, and we're going to seek distributors someplace else?
Well, I mean, I just wonder if to me, unless I'm missing some giant piece of information, it just looks really not great for DC. Like, it looks like they're just being shitheads, honestly. You look at Image or even smaller publishers like Mad Cave Studios, for instance, who I did a video on. They're based out of Miami, who are like making some of their comics free for people to read right now, and are really like, look, we understand things are bad and things are bad for us too, but like, let's just try and rejoice in this small thing together. You know what I mean? Like, and you don't see the big two really doing anything like that, and that to me says a lot about what their business means to them, which is a bottom line. And like, I know that, like in my heart, obviously, I know that it's about money, and they don't care about me, and they don't even really care about the comics that I read, so long as I buy them. You know what I mean? Like, they'll chop off a series that I've been wanting to read forever. That Loki series that I liked only got 5 issues. So, I know that, but it's not a good look to me. And I know that they're basically untouchable. People are going to read their DC comics no matter what. But to me, it's just frustrating to see local comic book shops struggling in that way, and then for them to try and profit off of it and not care. Like, that is harmful. There are comic book shops around here. I moved from Florida to Portland. I'm here in Portland. It's embarrassing of riches when it comes to comic book shops. There are so many, and they are all so cool. And I do frequent one, and that's because at Floating World Comic, where I go, they have a really good curation of like weird local artsy stuff as well. So they really have the thumb pulse of what's going on locally. This is a big comic reading town. But I have popped around and many of them, and a lot of them are just doing what they can right now to survive, so they're not breaking down like you were saying. And it's just like the big two aren't doing anything to like facilitate that or help. And you see the smaller guys coming out from the ashes being like, how can we help you? And meanwhile, you've got DC being like, it's time just for a world dominant to get into our heads.
It's funny you mention that, because that's kind of how it seems to me too, because you mentioned the big two. I remember when this first started, Image Comics was the first company to say, look, we're going to chill. We're going to make some of our books returnable. We're going to, they were the first major company to say, hey. And then you saw some other companies come behind them. And you're right, it was quiet from Marvel and DC, the two leaders of the industry. They make up a good 60 to almost maybe 70% of the market, based on the stuff that they put out. And you would think that they would, hey, maybe let's not, and let's be honest. And the funniest thing is, and again, when you look at the companies themselves, a lot of people are upset with Marvel because of the gluttony of variant comics, the comic covers they were doing. A lot of people, because of the buy-in, you had to get so many for this. And DC had made goodwill with comic shops where you can order a cover A and a cover B and not have to worry about, you have to buy X amount for this or X amount for that, like you did with Marvel. There were so many hoops that you had to jump through, where DC had a lot of goodwill with a lot of shops when it comes to certain books that they were doing. They were always at the forefront of a Vertigo. They shuttered the Vertigo line, which a lot of people are upset, but then they did Black Label, and a lot of the Black Label titles are pretty decent. For me, my favorite Black Label title is Far Sector. I'm really feeling one of Joe Hill's books, the one with Stuart Eminem, where this ghost ship comes back, and I'm trying to remember what it's called. I got 2 issues of it, and but I'm really enjoying it. So DC was at the forefront of doing something different with their Batman, their high gloss Harley Quinn, Joker books, the Wonder Woman book from Darren Warren. I'm trying to remember what his name is, but it's the 3-issue Wonder Woman book. I was really impressed with what DC was doing, and it's almost like with this move, they've taken all that goodwill, thrown it out the window, and said, screw it, we're in this to make money, which I get. But you're sacrificing your comic books stores, who are basically your bread and butter, who is keeping your business, I don't want to say afloat, But without comic fans, to me, you don't really have a business. Am I wrong? Am I the bad guy? Is me saying that, like, if you don't have comic fans,
I don't think so. The sort of cynic part of me is like, I think that DC and Marvel, like, I don't mean to link Marvel into this conversation because they're not like Scrooge McDuck into the comic book, like, scene the way that DC is right now, but their silence says a lot in this time, because it kind of feels like they know that no matter what they do, people are here to read the comics. You know what I mean? People will always want to read Batman comics, Superman comics, and people will always want to read Harley Quinn comics. You know what I mean? Like, they have such big names and such an almost monopoly on the comics industry and comics entertainment that I think that they know that no matter what they do, if they spit in, little Tiny Tim's face, like, does it matter?
I guess that's, and you're right, but I don't want you to be right. Not because I don't want you to.
I think that's so bad.
Yeah, it's like,
You know?
it's almost as like they're saying we can survive without comic shops, and that's, I don't want to say it, but you're right. That's such a shitty thing to do and to say, because there's no feeling like walking into a comic book store on Wednesday or whatever day, picking up a book or finding a new book that you love, finding something you didn't think you would find. I mean, this whole back wall over here. I mean, I going to a comic book store, I remember going and picking up Power Man and Iron Fist and getting Sanford Green to sign it. I remember going and finding this Wonder Woman Art Germ cover and just being excited that it was still on the shelf for cover price. When I looked online and eBay is selling it, hawking it for $20 and $30, you know? I will never forget going to a comic book store. One of the comic book stores that's no longer around, but as a physical store, he's still kind of like a pop-up shop. So Sanford, when he was doing Power Man and Iron Fist, Sanford Green, he was doing art, he was signing, he was doing some sketches and stuff, and Brittany Williams showed up. Brittany Williams had lived right outside Orangeburg, in a small town. She was the writer of Goldie. She's the artist of Goldie Vance. Sanford was a fan of her art. She was a fan of his art. He didn't realize that she lived there. She came into the shop to meet him, and he was just as excited to meet her. And there's a picture of the two of them basically doing the whole Spider-Man thing, basically doing that as if, and you wouldn't have gotten that out unless it was a comic book shop. And that's the one thing that I think, taking that callously and not appreciating your fans and not appreciating that kind of magic only happens in a comic book store. There's so many books that I picked up because a shop owner or somebody I met in the store was like, hey, you like that book, you should check this out, or vice versa. I remember I worked part-time at a comic book store, and I was like, yo, I put somebody on a Next Wave or Saga, or I ordered a book for somebody and they were so happy to get the Walking Dead Negan hardcover when it came in. And that's something you're not going to get in a Best Buy, or even, as much as I don't want to see GameStop go under, you're not going to get that when GameStop sells comics.
Yeah, because here's the thing, people who own comic book shops, they're not making bank. You know what I mean? These are small businesses that people start because they're really passionate about it. And my whole, I'm not trying to plug my channel, but the whole basis of my channel started with me going, and it started in Jacksonville, me going into a comic shop and asking for a comic rec every week. I never pitched the book. I had them recommend something to me that they personally think that people should read and enjoy. And that's how it started. I would read it and I would review it, as in give my own personal thoughts on it. I'm not really a reviewer. I'm pretty easy to please. But, and I think that there's something, like you said, there's something so magical about that. And we've known for a long time that, DC and Marvel, and even the smaller companies, they're a business, so their bottom line is in the dollar sign. I get that, but doesn't mean you get to trample all over the little people in the meantime. And it really is DC saying that we think that we can survive without comic book shops, and we don't really care. Because they might be right, but just because they're right doesn't mean that it's okay to do that. Because this race, it's so much more than just a place you go to buy comics. Like you were saying, it's a place, it's a community. And I think now more than ever, when we get out of quarantine, the bans are lifted in cities, and everything returns to some semblance of some kind of normalcy, we're gonna need spaces like that. In my really small town, there's one comic book shop, one, in Jacksonville, but I'm from in Florida, and just to go to my comic book shop, shopped at my dad's comic book shop, which was the only comic book shop way before I was born. So it's just like those things don't happen if we don't have those spaces, and it just seems so negligent to me that such a big company would take a stance like that, and not only take a stance like that, but like not even try and come out and be like, we just want to make sure we're getting comics into people's hands. They're literally just being like, I don't care.
And the interesting thing you brought it up is, and we're not. I guess I don't want people to think we're being doom and gloom, but the reason why we're talking about it is because a majority of the country is shut down. A majority of the country is not allowing people to go in unless you are a grocery store, or if you happen to be Lowe's. You're not going to be able to go in, and you're not going to be able to go into a department store and buy clothes or buy unless it's an essential. Unless you're going to buy groceries or something you desperately need, you're not going to be open. So a lot of comic book stores are closed, and the ones that are open are only doing curbside service, or they're doing mail order for the actual merchandise they have in the store that they can get. The reason why this is such a shift is because with a majority of the country shut down, them sending these books to stores that are still open in states that are able to still be able to sell things, or when governors lift, because every state is not going to lift ordinances at the same time. This is where, not to be all brainy, we're a country who's made up of individual states. So each state is going to do what they think is best for themselves. Like a Georgia who's opening up just about everything. And so if you're a comic book store in Georgia, yeah, you could sell these books. But if you're a comic book store in, let's say, Michigan, you may have tighter restrictions. So it doesn't do you any good for this to happen to you. Where Diamond is saying, hey, we're going to wait, because we're going to wait till at least, 50 to 60% of the country's open, and then we will start shipping, and then we will start getting new books out there. Because let's be honest, is an N95 mask more important than Batman? And I keep saying Batman 92, but that's the Art Germ punchline cover. But which one is more important? The essentials or these comics? And Diamond says we're going to chill because A, it's not safe for our employees, it's not safe for our workers. 2, it's not safe for you. We don't know how long these things how long this is going to last, and we don't want to gum up the works by sending and shipping comics through FedEx, UPS, the mail, when there needs to be essential things that need to be sent first. No, go ahead.
Bring up a great point too. It kind of the idea of going with the idea of just trying to circumvent Diamond by going with other distributors kind of throws just a dirty old coronavirus covered rag in the face of safety.
Yeah.
Because one of the reasons Diamond says that they're not distributing right now is it's not safe for their employees to be in their offices or workshops or factory or whatever it is. Warehouse is the word I was looking for. It's not safe right now. You're finding that, like, just recently here in Portland, a grocery store worker died of coronavirus. And so these people who are exposed to the public, they're still getting sick. And so kind of, to me, it also seems irresponsible in that way, too, where I'm kind of like, do you gotta? Like, really?
I honestly, And I don't want to. I want to bring up some of the things people in the chat were asking. Some people, yeah, Def Rocker. Part of the problem is I don't know what's going on. So that Justin, your audio for some reason, as you talk, the first time you talk, your audio's low, and then I don't know if it's the TV, it gets louder. So I'm trying to fix that, and I don't know how. But I think it might be our equipment. So I'm gonna turn up your volume just a little bit louder. But one of the things the chat brought up was, I want to say IMAX saying he's in Florida, your home state, where he's like, go ahead and bring up Florida. I was supposed to be at home with the parental units this week, and there are a lot of different people in different places where they're open, or South Carolina where they're half open, and you're right. It does seem like a dick move to do. The one thing I'm hoping that this does do. It is nice that Diamond does have some competition. I will say that, but I don't like the timing. Like, you could have done this a couple of months ago, or waited and said, okay, hey, we want to, after the pandemic, we want to make sure this doesn't happen again. That one company is in charge of how we do business. So we want to make sure a variety of people are able to provide books just in case something happens. But to Diamond's credit, like I said, I was talking to Yor. One of the things he had mentioned, he was like, Diamond is not great. He says, exactly, quote him, he says, they're not stellar, but good. If you're doing a comic grade, he said 6.0 to 6.5, very good. He says, one of the things that Diamond has tried, he says now, for him, he says about 95 to 98% good. But there, those times that that it doesn't work, it's irritating. He says, but at least Diamond is trying, like, changing their whole business, changing how they make boxes to ship comics, changing how they do damages, how their customer service works. He's like, is Diamond perfect? He's like, no. And York, if you know him, shout out to Heroes and Dragons. If you know him, he is not a monopoly guy. He is not a capitalist out here to make money. He's doing it for the love of the business. Just to give you a backstory about Jorg and Heroes and Dragons. Heroes and Dragons was, like you talked about, that shop that's generational. It was owned by a man, I want to say his name is Chris Foss. He owned it for a number of years. He got out of the comic business. He just did his pop-up shop. York came through, reopened the store within that year after they closed. He's been running it for 3 years now. He's not doing this because he thinks I'm going to be able to retire on these mountains of toys and, this Jetfire that I'm selling for $300 from the 80s. He's not doing it for that. He's doing it for the love of the business. And he's saying, look, there are times Diamond gets on his nerves, but for him to say, I have done a 180 and I am supporting Diamond, I literally had to be like, are you drinking? He's like, yeah, I am, but that doesn't matter. He was upset, and he was like, look, this is, and I don't want to, mischaracterize what he was saying, but he was upset because he was like, it did need to happen right now. He's like, we could have waited until the end. Now, that's not to say there aren't comic book stores who are not going to turn this down. I know of a couple of stores in our area who have signed up. They will have these books, and I understand.
Their hands a little bit, right? You know what I mean? Like, especially they're watching the bills rack up and the cash register be empty because people aren't able to come in. It's not safe, or it's not allowed, or whatever other reason.
You're right, and I wonder how they feel about it. I asked, they were just kind of mum on the situation, kind of like, we're trying to make sure, and I get it from that side of it. They're trying to get the books in the hands of their customers. But when I talked to York was like, I order maybe 8 Daphne Burns issues, so it's like, it doesn't even make sense for me to order these books and go through the hassle of mail order to get them out, and then learn this whole new, whatever system, whatever these hoops to jump through to get these books out to people. Because, no, go ahead.
Sorry, that was kind of my question too, and I posed this to you. I don't know if you can answer it, but like, regardless of the timing, and you and I can both agree, and York can probably agree, and probably all the comic book shop owners of this, it won the time. This ain't it, y'all, but it's fine. You did it, and it's over. But even if they had picked a better time, do you think that they would have split the diff? So what would have been the situation, or what will be the situation where they will distribute some through Diamond, distribute some through these other two, and the comic book shops and consumers are just going to have to deal with it? Or will they send out first printing to both companies, and both companies just fight for the business? Like, I don't understand how this sort of thing can be profitable.
I don't know. I honestly think it's going to be one of those things where you bring up a good point, because do you send, because this is the thing, as we go forward, do you have to sign up with these companies? Because let's say if you're signed up with Diamond, DC could easily say, because we don't have an exclusive, if you want this variant cover of the new Batman Metal, or what is it, DC Dark, or whatever their new thing that's coming out later on, whenever this gets back together, they could send that through exclusively through these two companies, where a comic shop has to say, you know what, I have to sign up or I miss out on these books. And I understand having more than one company so that Diamond isn't a monopoly. But I don't know how this is going to work going forward, because you're right, because you could easily say, hey, you're going to get X amount of this print, you're going to get X amount of this print, which means you have to, as a company, you have to order from this company, and you got to do that anyway. But I guess I think a lot of people are not a fan of the timing. That's what they're having a problem with. It's the timing, and why now? Because you could have waited a couple of months and rolled this out, and you would have honestly had goodwill on your side.
I think so. Especially if you come out in front of it. If they had come out in front of it and been like, hey, so we learned some stuff in the pandemic. We're a little worried. We're trying this out. Let's see what.
I mean,
and like, okay, like, pop off, it would have been.
It's almost, and this is the one thing I wonder about, like, who's in their PR department, who is like in charge of this, and I wonder, did they bank on the fact that everybody was always upset with Diamond? Because I know you've probably seen it. And whenever Diamond has these retailer summits, there's always the Village people and the pitchforks, and they're always mad at Diamond. And I'm like, man, you guys really don't like Diamond. And I'm like, it's just them. And they're trying not to be dicks. They're trying to do better, but it's just them. And I wonder if they banked on that vitriol and then said, they will like this if we do it now. And then they were not expecting, because you mentioned Alan Gill. There was a guy by the name of Brian Hibbs. We posted his Facebook comments on our Facebook page. He went point by point, where he was just livid. And it was scathing. And a majority of the people who signed on and who commented, some of them were like, hey, what about this? But a lot of, I want to say majority, some of those people were like, hey, what about this? And they were, devil's advocate. But majority of them were either shop owners or comic fans who were like, man, F this. And I'm seeing more of that than I am the other side. And I think it's all about that whole thing about timing.
Yeah. And I think that, I hate to use the news term, but I am a news writer. We are in unprecedented times. And I know that's a hot button term right now in every news article that you read, but it's true. And it applies to comics right now too. And so I think that consumers and comic book shops, owners, workers, whatever, anybody in the comics space is going to remember what this looks like when we go forward. Because we've never really run into something like this, and we are seeing some shining stars here. We are seeing people like Image, and we're seeing people, like, I keep bringing out Mad Cave, but I think what they're doing is really cool. Like letting people read a lot of their issues for free and stuff like that. Or we're seeing comic book creators like Jen Bartel, who I love so much, who release like free comic book coloring pages and stuff like that. You know, you're seeing people coming out of this just in the same way you're seeing like news related humanity stories of heroes. And it sounds really dramatic, but I think it's really cool that we can see these people. And I will remember that. You know what I mean? I will be like, I'm going to buy from their shop, or I'm going to do a video about their comics, or I want to, you know, I'm going to make sure that I put a couple extra image comics in my shopping cart. And it's not like everyone's going to feel that way or think that way. But I think it's really important to look at who's doing what right now and who's trying to cover their own butts, even though they're multi-kabillion jillionaires already, aka DC.
I gotta agree with you. Well, you bring up a good point where you're right. I am going to remember. One of the things I know just about Dynamite, they've been giving away a lot of free issues you can go download. I know Dark Horse Comics has been doing a bunch of free issues. I know Comixology has been Comixology. Lord, I get so many emails from them, but they have been saying, "Hey, we have this many first issues or this many discounted titles." Marvel has been doing the same thing. You're right. I am going to remember that. I'm going to remember who was the company that who did go above and beyond, who wasn't just a business. Just like I'm going to remember Ruth Chris took small business money, small business loans of $20 million that could have went to a comic shop. I'm going to remember that when we get out of it and I have $200 to spend on date night and I'm like, do I want to go to a chain or do I want to go to some place that just screwed over its workers and in a roundabout way stole money? I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember Shake Shack was like, yo, we took this money, but we going to give it back before anybody even realized that they got, they didn't take a public demand for people to come out and be upset like Ruth Chris that already is expensive as hell. I'm going to remember that. I'm going to remember when it was so funny because we were in the newsroom before it really got bad. When the Cheesecake Factory said, we're not paying our rent, we're paying our workers. Deal with it. And I was like, yo, the Cheesecake Factory is gangster.
We want some fondue. We go in when it opens.
Yeah, I'm going to remember those companies who actually went out and said, hey, we're going to do what we can for our company, but we're also going to do what we can for our customers. I remember beer companies and distilleries saying, hey, we're not going to make 37,000 bottles of this. We're going to make hand sanitizer. I remember that. One of our local pizza places here is Village Idiot. They had a deal where you can send, I think it's like maybe $10, maybe $20, where you can, in your name, you tell them they will deliver pizzas to first responders. And it was like a deal, it was like a great deal. And it was like, I'm going to remember that when I get out. I'm going to remember that when it comes to me spending my money. Because when you are, I don't know any other word to say, a dick about stuff for no reason, you're right. I'm going to remember that.
Is it going to change the way DC Comics, do you think?
I don't know if it's going to change. You bring up a good point. Batman is the most popular character ever. One of the most popular characters ever. He's one of the most recognizable characters. It's one of those things where if you say so-and-so is going to be Batman, people lose their minds. In the chat right now, Payjon J says, what did I miss? IMAX said Ben Affleck is coming back as Batman. And they're that's, you can only do that with Batman. We know we have a Batman movie coming out soon. I don't know. Batman is one of my favorite characters. DC is not my favorite company. And this does not help me instill confidence going forward when it comes to this kind of stuff. I love Batman. I get it. That is my favorite title. I get it just about. I've read every from Tynion, Tom King, Scott Snyder. I go back to Frank Miller. That is one of my favorite characters. But this does leave a sour taste in my mouth, and I'm going to watch the draft tonight I'm going to equate it to sports. I'm going to watch the draft tonight. Some of our chatters and viewers are doing the same. We probably would have more people watching us if we weren't doing this on draft night, because people are losing their mind. I've stopped watching football as much as I used to based on the NFL's business practices. And I was a huge football fan to the point when I was like, hey, the Panthers get a ring, you get a ring. And I was telling that to my girlfriend at the time. Was like, they win a championship, you win a championship. I love the NFL. And I have pulled back dramatically based on some of the things. I knew it was a joke. I want to put it out there. But that's how much I loved it. And even now, I don't watch a football game every Sunday like I used to. And that's something I loved. And I can say the same thing about DC. You know, you inadvertently closing some of these comic book shops, if that's what happened, I'm going to remember that.
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't read a ton of DC, admittedly. I do what I read I like. But I think that I will continue to read DC, but I will certainly be buying it through my local comic book shop. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to go over to another distributor, and if that becomes a problem for my local comic shop and they stop carrying DC, I don't know that I would cry about it. I'd be a little bummed. But, I don't know. I stand in support of my local comic book shop, like, full stop. You know what I mean? Like, all the local comic book shops here treat their customers so well. They're so good to them. And it's just like, I don't have time for that. It's just, it's very, I don't know. Like you said, it really does put a sour taste in my mouth about it. And I did see someone in the chat a while ago asking, this is unrelated, asking about what we thought of the new Thor run, and if you mean the new Donny Cates Thor run. I read the first issue, and I enjoyed it. Weird place to take it, but with the whole Galactus thing, but...
Honestly, it's funny because you mentioned that. So, I bought the first issue. I really like Sif as a character. So that's the cover that I bought for Thor #1, Donny Cates. I picked it up. I liked it okay, and then I did a video with George, who's his store manager, and Eric Woodard, the owner of Scratch and Spit, and we were talking comics. And Jorg was like, "Give Thor another chance." 2 was sold out. I went to Cosmic Rays to get issue 2, 3, and 4, and I read them all in a row, and I was like, this is good. Like, I honestly was caught off guard by spoiler alert for you guys in the chat. Thor is now the herald of Galactus. And I was like, wait, what? And I thought there was a great fight between him and Beta Ray Bill in issue 2. I thought the fight was really good. I don't want to give too much away, but I was really impressed by it. And I thought that was a good book. Very easy to jump on. You don't have to read a lot of, in comics we always accused of having, all this huge continuity. You don't have to read a lot. You can pick those up.
That's really fair. I'm not a huge Thor fan. I've read Thor comics. I think they're so boring. I don't care about your old English. I don't care that you're cute and you lettered it and that old lettering. I don't care. I don't like it. And so I read this, and I was mildly interested in it, which is a lot for a Thor comic for me, personally. And, yeah, I didn't feel like I was behind the curve, which I feel like a lot when I am reading a lot of your core Marvel character comic books. It is hard sometimes to jump in. Some writers are not kind to new readers, and this one was. I agree. So if you're interested in Thor comics, I would pick it up. As a non-Thor comic lover, my dog is crying for no reason. Life is hard. I would pick it up. But I'll give the second issue a chance. I didn't read past #1, but that's kind of how it goes with the channel. I read 1 and then I'm done.
You're right. A lot of, for me, I gave it because, one, I'm trying to get, Thor was never my favorite character. Growing up, I read it. I know Walter Simonson, is one of the greats, and I don't knock people's stuff that they like it. They like it. I try not to knock it, but it just didn't hit for me. A God from the Sky coming down, it never really hit. until honestly, maybe later on, as the movies came out, and then I went back and read some of them. And honestly, it was as I got older that I actually started to appreciate some of the books. One of the books, I think, too, you brought up a really good point. A lot of writers, people have to understand how certain people write. So, like, let's take a writer like a book writer like Stephen King. Stephen King writes a totally different way than J.K. Rowling does. And you have to find a writer whose style you like, because one of my favorite writers is Jonathan Hickman. Hickman is like pound for pound one of my favorite writers. But Hickman is not a friend for just one issue. Like Hickman, you got to put on the nerd glasses. You got to sit down. You got to okay, you can't have anything going on. It's Hickman writes, and you have to go into it understanding that. And that's something else as comic readers, we need to be a little bit more educated about how certain people write books, because these are talented people.
And they say, so I always call myself like a comic book reader. Like, my shelves are full of comics, but I still feel I'm still not like the person who has the Rolodex in their mind. Like, you do way more than me of like who writes what, who illustrates what. And I'll be like, goodbye. I'll be like, oh, I really liked this comic, and Leroy is the person who's like, yeah, well, you should read this and this and this, and it has to do with this. So I do sometimes struggle like that, but in talking to people who are involved in making comics or work at a comic book shop or, the shop owners or whatever, they're like, if you like the writer, you should follow their writing. It doesn't matter what character they're writing. If you enjoy their writing, you will enjoy that book. And I find that really true because I like Cates as a writer. For the most part, I've enjoyed a lot of things that he's written, and he made Thor palpable for me. So I guess it's mostly true. And I will also die on the hill of Jonathan Hickman is writing God. Neil Gaiman, who is pretty high up there for me as well, who writes, of course, novels and comics. But I had to read Powers of 10 and House of X like several times. Like each week a new book would come out, and I would have to read all the books before it again to understand what was happening in that book. And I was like, am I the only person? I feel really dumb. No. But he's just in it. He's in it with the lore. Like, to look in that man's brain, I swear.
I'm with you 200%. I want to shout out IMAX. I still buy vinyl records. I buy CDs. I bought as you can see, I like to collect things. I might be have a little hoarder in me. So I have been to thrift stores, flea markets. I have found cassette tapes because I bought a stereo system that had I bought a stereo system, and it actually came with tape players where you could actually record one tape onto another tape, and I just was like, this is my childhood. So I found the actual, and this is as nerdy as you can get. I found the soundtrack to Blade Runner, some of the songs on tape, and I bought it. I found
a love mixtape with Careless Whisper.
I bought the tape of Rhythm Nation in the last year. So don't feel bad, you guys, if you buy CDs, because I'm the idiot still buying tapes and vinyl records. I literally just put in, so one of the things that I loved, I like anime, but I was flipping through one night, late at night, and the country musician Sturgill Simpson had a new album, and it's not country music. He basically came out with an album that is like some type of rock fusion something. It's called Sound and Fury. He released it last year. They made an anime to the actual album. I just ordered the CD and vinyl for this. That's how much I cannot help it. But you mentioned Hickman. I am the same way. When House of 10 and Powers of 10, I literally was like, I don't know what this is. And I went and looked stuff up. I honestly, Hickman is like that. Warren Ellis is like that to a certain extent. And you have to pick the books that you like and say, okay, I'm going to take the time and put the energy into it. Hickman wrote a book which is so funny because right now it's kind of on par with what's going on. Hickman wrote a book called Black Monday Murders, which is about the stock market and the fact that the stock market is run by human sacrifice. And it's actually run by the Illuminati, and that there are times that human sacrifice is necessary for the market to go up or down. It is a mind.
It sounds something I would enjoy. I'll have to pick that up.
I honestly cannot tell you. He's coming back to do it. I sent him an email, just a shot in the dark. I found an email address for him, and I was like, I would like to talk about this book if you would let us on our channel. I love Black Monday Murders, and it's very interesting. It's dark, but it is deep, and he writes for that. So I think we need to really put forth the effort in actually learning about our artists and writers, because some of them are freaking geniuses. Like this, some of the things they come up with, I don't know how they do it. I don't. You interviewed Kelly Sue DeConnick and Matt Fraction, and they're a little off to write some of the stuff they come up with.
They are way cooler than I will ever be. That's for sure. Yeah, and they knew what they were talking about. They were great. But following writers, and Kelly Sue DeConnick is a writer who I follow. Like, I don't care about Aquaman, but she's writing Aquaman right now. Good. But it makes it so hard to be a character stan. So I'm a Frost stan, and I cannot stand the way that some people write her. I mean, I think Hickman does a great job. He did a great job. And that giant size X-Men Jean Grey Emma Frost was great. But it makes it difficult to just want to read your main squeeze, But I think that following comics that way is more lucrative for you as a reader to follow your favorite writers instead of your favorite artists. This is very far away from what's going on with comics, but...
No, I like this because this is what, honestly, this is kind of what I wanted this to be anyway. Us just to basically, because I have friends who love comics, but it's like, there's very few times where you get to actually sit down and just nerd out with some people in the chat and be like Brett Warren, Hickman, I hate, they love him. Yeah, Ellis is like that too. D. Steezel's like most writers are hit and miss for me, which I get. It's very much that way. You mentioned Jen Bartel. For me, Jenny Fresen, her covers, I've bought hers. Tula Latoy, oh my gosh. The woman draws things that are so beautiful, so dark, so erotic. I gave that woman probably $75 of my hard-earned money when I met her in Charlotte. I bought the book is on my desk. I bought 2 prints. I bought I bought everything. I got a picture. I tried not to smile. I was as hard as whatever because I was like, I'm getting to meet. I'm trying not to nerd out. I'm not a real hugger, but I wanted to hug her and be like, thank you. But I was like...
And I guess when he's and he's crying.
Yes, it was just like... But you're right. It's so much fun to follow creators and artists and writers that you love because it's one of those things where it's like, you've given me so much joy. I appreciate it. And that's why I said, for me, I know... Jen Bartel, love her covers. A little mad some of her variant covers are expensive that I can't afford because she did a great Rogue cover that I cannot get, and I'm just like, outside of Jean Grey, she is one of my number ones. I literally just bought the Rogue and Gambit pop that came out. I had to buy them together because I think outside of, I think they might be the greatest couple ever. It's just... in comics, Gambit and Rogue are it for me. I've watched them grow. Say it again?
Did you read Mr. and Mrs. X?
Mr. and Mrs. X. Yes, I did, but I haven't caught up on it, yes. I have X-Men, is it X-Men 25? Their first cover where their first kiss is on. drawn by Adam Cooper. Like I have that. So yeah, my wife wants me to get rid of a lot of stuff in my house. She was so happy we did this because a lot of this stuff is mine. Some of it's Michael's, but a lot of this is mine that
Yeah,
I've.
my stuff too, and now my walls are like barren.
Oh, snap. Brett Warren says I was able to meet Jenny Frizen. She's so cool. Frizen gave his daughter a free print, and I'm like that. Like that's what was so cool, and like meeting some of these people. Sanford being able to sign this cover right here. Just meeting some of these creators and some of these artists. That's what has been cool to me. Like, and then buying their work and then realizing and talking to them. And so I guess that's why I guess in the beginning of the video we were talking about why this whole diamond distribution thing is a big deal. That's because this kind of changes how we get the things we love. You know, the comics that we love, and that we spend hard-earned money, buy plastic covers for them. You know, put them on the wall. You know, tell other people, annoy people about which comics to read. Like that really changes how we engage in this art form that we love so much. Breck Warren says X-Men number 24. 25 was when Wolverine got his. You're correct. When Wolverine got his adamantium pulled out. Thank you, Breck Warren. Appreciate that. See that comic fans right there.
Yeah, see, like that to me is impressive. And every time you go into the comic shop, there's always somebody that like that. And I'm more like, I read this and it was good. Which I think is totally okay, obviously. But I think that it's great that people like me and people like you and also Breck Warren can come together and have civil and normal conversations about comic books. You know what I mean? And about the state of distribution, because it does affect comic book shop, the state of distribution does, but it also affects, like you said, like us readers, it affects how we interact with this medium that has brought all of us together, and I think that isn't something to take lightly, and I feel like DC is a little bit, which, like, whatever.
I do, I hope, I guess it's one of those things where I'm like, I know Jim Lee is the editor in charge right now after they lost. Dan Dido was let go from the company. This could be his. E. Starkey, let me know what that pick is. Panthers about to do a draft. Our pick is in. I have some thoughts. I hope it's a good one. This has been a tough year for me as a Panthers fan. As a football fan, this has been devastating. We lost Cam Newton. Luke Kuechly retired. They sold the team. This has been hard for me. D. Stevens.
Comics, but I'm sorry, I can't shoot about sports, but I support, and I hope it goes great.
I appreciate that. D. Stevens says I still got those hologram covers from X-Men 25. But yeah, I'm hoping that Jim Lee had this plan, and because he started out, he's not being this corporate, jerk, and he has a plan to make this easier for comics fans so that we have more than just one place, so that the industry doesn't implode if, God forbid, something happened to Diamond. I'm hoping that's what it is, because I've been a fan of Jim Lee's art ever since he was doing X-Men. I still have a ton of Jim Lee comics. I bought so many Wildcat comics because of his art. The Divine, somebody help me out. The book he did for Image before he quit, it was like this weird, but I have so many Jim Lee comics. I have so many X-Men comics. Jim Lee is the reason why I love the X-Men. Jim Lee is one of the reasons why, and Chris Claremont are the reason why I love comics, because that art was so electric. I got started in when the X-Men were scattered and they came back together right before X-Men #1, where they had the 5 connecting covers. That's my X-Men. I grew up in the 90s and seeing the X-Men cartoon and realizing that's what I'm reading. So I'm hoping Jim Lee, as running DC, is like, yo, he puts out a press release. It's like, I understand there's some uproar. This is why we're doing it. But, because right now I'm a little like Whiskey Tango Foxtrot.
transparency would go a long way, regardless of their reasoning. Um, just knowing why they decided to make the decision at this time, like a peek into their thought process, would I think speak volumes to people who are looking to them to not be a corporate greed monster.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. I'm hoping that some of the cooler heads are like, okay, we see some of this, we see some of the chatter, so let's tone it back. D. Steves was like, Jim Lee is my favorite OG artist. That like, so just a little backstory for me. I was a kid coming up when Image happened. I was like, that was like my formative years. Image Comics, Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane. I just backed when the day it happened when Todd McFarlane re-released on Kickstarter his Spawn OG action figure, and he was like, I'm redoing it. I've been following that. I was like, however much it costs, here's my PayPal information. I want this figure when it comes out. This is one of the ones I didn't hide from my wife and was like, she's like, a package came. It's got your name on it. What did you buy? I told her straight up, look, I don't care what we got to do. I'm getting one, at least one. I didn't do the 160. I didn't blow my stimulus check on it, but Spawn is I remember buying that first issue of Spawn in a comic book store. Like, I still have it. And say what?
Did you know I interviewed him?
Todd McFarlane?
Yeah.
I don't want to admit that you got to interview him because I was hating when I saw the Matt Fraction. Kelly Sue, and I watched that video, and I was so happy and proud of you, but I'm not gonna lie. I called you a couple curse words in my head because I was like, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, how could, I was hating. I was like, I went to a panel of theirs, so the fact that you got to interview Todd McFarlane is awesome.
That's funny, I didn't know you were a big Spawn fan. That's why
I am and I'm not, but like I remember him drawing Spider-Man, and I remember them leaving and then making Spawn and getting the issues and buying Spawn toys. And I remember the evolution of Spawn. And so when Todd McFarlane was like, "Yo, I'm re-releasing this action figure, I'm gonna make it better. I'm gonna make it's gonna come with a case," and I was like, do you want my personal information? How do you want to make sure this happens?"
Yeah, Spawn is cool. Like, I think that's it's hard to deny. I don't know how we got onto this conversation. But it's just, I don't think that anybody, maybe the content of the comic isn't for everyone, and that's fine. Just like superhero comics are for everyone, but like, it's just a cool character. He's a really cool character.
It really was. How in the hell did you get Todd McFarlane? Because I'm still hating a little bit, but I'm okay.
Well, all the partners were at a comic book shop doing a signing, and as you know, they're local to Portland. So I got a press release, and they were like, "Want to do this?" And I was like, "That's not." It was very stressful, and he's full of energy. He's like,
yes.
He seems like somebody who wakes up at like 4 a.m. every day, does like 40 push-ups, and then goes and creates like amazing art, and like also he has like a toy business on the side. Like, he's one of those dudes who does more in a day than I'm going to do in an entire month, I think. Like, he's just really full of energy. Yeah, so it was a little stressful to like interview all of them because I was just trying to keep it so brief, but that's how it worked out. It was more luck than anything.
I'm not gonna lie. I salute you because when me and Michael go and do interviews, there are a couple of times I'll be like, "Dude, do you know who that is?" And he'd be like, "No, I don't." Like, he's like not excited at all. We did that for Kirk Hammett from Metallica when I interviewed Kirk, and I was like so inside, like trying not to nerd out. And then Kirk Hammett was like, "Yo, I knew Frank Frazetta. And I know his wife. I own some of his original pieces, and we took a picture in front of one of the Death Dealer. And I was just like, here's a guy who loves this stuff as much as we do, but also is an artist and a creative type. And I was just like nerding out. It was just so cool to do. Michael, I know that's you. I know that's you in the chat, sir. I can tell that's you. But yeah, it's amazing. it's amazing that you got to interview him because he's like people call OGs. He's one of the original people who created and gave so much to this industry. So I'm gonna do a shameless plug, guys. You know, you come to our channel for a lot of stuff, but Destiny has done a lot of interviews with a lot of comic people. She's in the heart of the comic industry in Portland. Dark Horse Comics is based out of there. Who else is out of there? There's like, is Boom out of there as well?
Image Lion Forge now, I think.
Yes.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. First, second? No. Ooh, you're putting me on the spot.
I just know that you like every week she does something. I want to tell you guys, go check out her channel. She has very interesting opinions. Some I agree with, some I don't. But I will say one of the greatest things about it is she does this for the love of comics. A lot of people do it because they're trying to make money. We're not making any money off of this. We're just doing it because we love the entertainment field and we love the comics. So I'm going to wrap this up because I got to go back to work and you got to do stuff to do. So I want to say thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Destiny, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/KTWComics. I'm also at Twitter at hello_Destiny. But yeah, come and hang out. I am doing some Animal Crossing content on my page right now, but I will return to comics shortly. Do not fret.
So guys, that's enough from us. So if you're watching the draft, you can get back to watching it. I got to go back upstairs, finish work. Some people from work, my producer's calling me. So I want to say thank you for checking us out, and we'll see you next time. This has been The Pull List.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. No, thank you for being here. I got to turn this off before I get fired if I say something I'm not supposed to.